We're in the book of Luke, and we're journeying with Jesus through this book. We're learning to be disciples of Jesus, or followers of Jesus, or apprentices of Jesus. This morning, I want to talk about the subject of the importance of Jesus. Do you sometimes feel in your life that, sometimes life just seems to be going so well? And you sense the presence of God with you. You sense the joy of God. You sense God's provision for you, especially when you become a Christian, right? It's so easy in those moments to be filled with joy, to be filled with hope. The reality is, for most of us, for most Christians, the normal Christian life is it doesn't really have those immense ups all the time, those immense places of joy. And pretty much the discipleship life is pretty ordinary in many ways. But sometimes it even goes further that it seems difficult. It seems like God is not there. It seems like God is not hearing your prayers. It seems like that you're struggling and there just doesn't seem to be an outcome for this. This morning, as we come to a pivotal passage in Luke, we're going to press into this and ask God to show us why is it that this happens, and to teach us in these moments that we press into Jesus, that we press into knowing Him better in these moments. And I want to say right up front that this is the key idea that I want to talk to this morning, that Jesus is important, not just because He undoes all that is wrong with this world and with us, but because He has come to remake us into what we should be. Into what we should be. We have this sense in our lives that sometimes we're like a donut, right? That it doesn't matter how good the donut seems to have got some sprinkles on it and whatever takes your fancy. I like jam donuts. Doesn't quite fit the analogy, but let's go with those ring donuts. Where you've got sprinkles or chocolate icing or perhaps just a plain cinnamon donut. But in the middle, there's this hole. And often in life, we sense that there's something missing. And we sense we're always striving to push toward that, never quite achieving it. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. This morning, Jesus, I believe, is going to show us why that is. In classical music, and I like most music, I like some classical music. My favorite is jazz music. But in classical music, the type of classical music I don't like, and I'm only starting to figure out now that there is some method behind the madness, but it's this classical music where there just seems to be noise going on. And it seems like the orchestra is battling with each other. That the violinist is not quite playing the same timing as the cello and the other people. And it seems like that things are, and there's a musical term, discordant. It feels like it's clashing, and there's this tension rising, and there's this tension, and normally when I hear music like that, I switch it off. But the person who's writing that music, he's intentionally creating this tension for you. He's intentionally pushing, or she's intentionally pushing you to a point where there will be a breakthrough for you, a point where the music will begin to make sense. And I believe Jesus, in this pivotal passage this morning, is going to speak into that. We're going to read two passages, but they relate to each other. We're in Luke chapter 18, verse 31. Jesus took the 12 aside. The 12 were His closest followers. And He told them, we're going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. Let's just pause there. There's a little bit of tension here. Jesus says we're going up. We're going up to Jerusalem. There's a sense of this climax beginning to build through the book of Luke. 9 times in the book of Luke does He talk about Jesus setting out for Jerusalem, resolutely turning His face toward it. And there's this sense, this rising sense of tension happening for the disciples and for us as we read through the story. Jericho is much lower. It's actually below sea level, where we believe Jericho was. It's below sea level, and there's about 1,000 meters you travel up in altitude, over 30 kilometers or so. This is going up to this pivotal place where things were going to happen for Jesus. And Jesus says this. He says, everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. What's that all about? In the Old Testament, Jesus would teach us that the prophets and the law and the poetry books, they talk about him. They point to him. That it's all about him. There's this integrated story that Jesus is not just a bolt-on or an add-on to God's storyline, but that the story of God and mankind is moving toward a pivotal point in history. For example, in Isaiah 53 that we love so well, it talks about this lamb being led to the slaughter, that this person being silent and not saying a word. Psalm 22 in particular talks about these people encircling this person and piercing his hands and feet. Psalm 22 is this famous passage which talks about, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is what Jesus quotes on the cross. Psalm 22 also talks about the person's life being poured out like a drink offering. Psalm 69 talks about, they offer me sour wine for my thirst. Psalm 22:18, they divide my garments among them and throw dice for my clothing. Throughout the Old Testament, there is this relentless movement toward this pivotal moment in history which Jesus is talking about. And so Jesus says this is what's going to happen. Verse 32 and 33, he says he, the Son of Man, Jesus, will be delivered over to the Gentiles, to the Romans. They will mock him, insult him, spit on him. They will flog him and kill him. On the third day, he will rise again. This idea to mock somebody is to belittle somebody, to treat their contribution to this world as nothing, to say you're a nobody and you get mocked. What about to insult? To insult is to mistreat somebody, to ridicule them, to break them down. So bullying has been with us forever, right? It's not just a new phenomenon, right? Perhaps it's online now. But bullying people. Jesus will be bullied. To spit on somebody means to treat somebody as dirt, as nothing. That you spit on them, show them contempt. To flog somebody is to say to this person, you're deserving of punishment. You're a criminal. You deserve to feel pain. And we're going to take out our anger on you, and judgment and justice. To kill somebody is to take away the ability to breathe. What you're saying when you kill somebody is you're saying, the very air that you're breathing, you don't deserve to even breathe the air. You're an oxygen thief. So Jesus will step into our world. And according to Jesus, he's saying he is the focus and pivot point of history. He's saying that everything is leading up to him. And that his death and resurrection will begin the undoing of those things which are wrong with this world. And the next story we'll see an example of how wrong we can be to others. But notice in verse 34, let's come back to us. The disciples didn't understand any of this. The meaning was hidden from them, and they did not know what he was talking about. And the word is in the imperfect tense. It means they didn't have a clue. They didn't have a clue before, and they still didn't have a clue, and they didn't have a clue for a long time. In fact, the penny dropped only after Jesus showed up when he rose from the dead. They didn't know what he was talking about. You see, friends, in spite of Jesus having shown them that throughout the scriptures this has been prophesied, their expectations of what this person, the Son of Man, would do was not that. Their expectation was that this person would come and restore life to how it should be without any struggle, without any hurt, without anything going wrong, without any need to press into it. They thought Jesus or this Messiah would just come and usher in the kingdom. Maybe there'll be a battle with the Romans and everybody will be the hero, but everything would just change. But they missed it. Their expectations of what Jesus would bring to them and do for them was wrong. It was misplaced. It was the easy road, not the difficult road. Forgetting that it's in the difficulty of life that we are formed to be more like God. They'd missed it. This is one of the reasons I believe in the Bible that it is true. If you are writing this as a storybook after Jesus, say their disciples or their followers were writing this, he wouldn't make the disciples to be such klutches. He would make them out to be heroes. But persistently through the Bible, he's showing the disciples just didn't get it. And so somehow it identifies with us, because I know for me, many times I go, I just don't get this, God. And sometimes later I see, okay, God had a bigger picture in mind. They didn't get it until after the resurrection. But the text does show us that sometimes we are slow to see what God is doing, because our expectations of what God is like or should be like is wrong and prevents us from seeing God. On Thursday, I was having a discussion with a man, and perhaps he's watching, and I hope I say this respectfully to you. And he was saying he's an atheist, and one of the reasons he's an atheist, because if God is a God of love, why did he allow things like Auschwitz to happen? Why did he allow the people to be murdered like that? The Polish, the Jews, the Gypsies. If God is a God of love, why would he do that? And my answer to him was this: that how do we know what love is unless God has revealed it to us? How do we even know what love is except the expression of the Christian God who has shown his love for us? Therefore, even to say we know what love is like comes from the very character of God himself. Somebody's written a book about this. He says that atheists actually steal from God. They actually take the very things about God's character and they use it as an argument against him. And we should go as Christians, no, that's not yours to use, because an atheist, there's no such thing as love. We're just chemistry blobs floating around. But this God of love steps into this world. But our expectations of God and what he should be doing, in this case, that if God is a God of love, he should be behaving like this. No, if God is a God of love, he's going to do something dramatically different, which is what Jesus is talking about here. But notice the disciples were on a journey. Notice that we are on a journey with God. That God doesn't leave us there where we are as clutches, as having two left feet or just a handful of thumbs. He doesn't leave us there. His desire is that we become what he's created us to be for all time. So how does the story unfold? Is there any hope for anyone? Last week, we saw the story of this rich man who didn't follow Jesus because he was wealthy. And Jesus says it's harder for a rich man to be saved than for a camel to go through an eye of a needle. And everybody says, well, who can be saved? And Jesus says, what is impossible for man is possible for God. And here's a story of it becoming possible. Let's read the story. It's a story of a person who is blind. Luke 18:35. As Jesus approached Jericho, remember he was going toward Jerusalem, a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. I want you to notice how the text and the people label this man. I think it's deliberate. When he heard the crowd going by, he asked what was happening. They told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. So he calls out, verse 38, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Those who led the way rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more. In other words, they were saying, you don't have any voice here. You are not important. Is this the same as mocking and insulting that Jesus was talking about that they were going to do to him? Is this what the crowd is doing by saying this to this man? Jesus, Son of David, what's that all about? The Old Testament spoke about King David reigning on the throne and this good king reigning on the throne and his descendants reigning on the throne forever if they followed God. And we know the fulfillment of that is Jesus. Both his parents, Joseph and Mary, we believe were descendants of David. And so Jesus comes as the Son of David to establish the rule and reign of God in our hearts and on this earth. So he cries out all the more. He's got a voice. And so he speaks out. Notice here in verse 40, Jesus stops. He stops. He's going to treat this person as a person, not a blind man, not somebody to be kept quiet, locked away, put on the side of the road. He's going to treat this person as a person who has worth. And notice what he says. He doesn't go to the man. He says to the very people telling this man to shut up, he says, he ordered the man to be brought to him. Jesus is saying, hey, don't mock this guy. Go serve him. Serve him. Bring him here. Treat him like a human being. Bring him here. Jesus asks him, I mean, this is kind of obvious, right? What this man wants. Jesus asks him, what do you want me to do for you? He wants this man to notice his need, to articulate his need, to be honest about his need. This man says, verse 42, Lord, I want to see. The word in the original is the word anablepo. Ana means again. He's saying, I want to see again. Perhaps, and I'm guessing here, perhaps when he was younger, something went wrong. He knows what he's missing out on. He has a sense of what's missing. He has a sense of the donut hole. There's a hole in my life, God. It's missing. I want to see again. He knew he needed to reclaim something that was missing, something that was lost. The Christian life is returning to something we have lost. It's returning to something we have lost, and God is asking us to see that, to notice that. God is not just interested in changing the world around us. He wants to change it by changing us. And so sometimes that journey is easy. Sometimes it's harder. But He doesn't leave us to our own devices. He doesn't leave us just to try harder. See, because friends, Jesus comes to die on the cross. What's happening in that moment? Some people would view Christianity like this. They would say, well, we were human beings. We did something wrong. We angered God. God must punish us. So Jesus took our punishment and God's happy with us now. There's more to it than that. There is a sense that we have a debt toward God. We have a debt toward each other.